Hey guys, welcome to the video. My name is Oliver King and this channel is all about how to make money from your art. And for me, this includes things like graphic design, photography, and videography. This video is going to be more directed towards the graphic design sort of thing. And what I'm going to look into is the vectors that I've sold so far on stock photography websites. So this is including things like Adobe Stock, Shutterstock, and Big Stock. So far, just as a full disclaimer, I'm a complete beginner at this. If you've seen my channel and if you've seen some of the other videos that I put out, I take this from the angle of a beginner getting started on this sort of a thing. So this is going to be kind of rudimentary knowledge at the very beginning that you can hopefully use to get started yourself, sell your first few vectors, and yeah, hopefully sell a lot more in the future as well. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go over some of the vectors that I've sold in the beginning. I've sold about 10 so far across the platforms that I'm using. So I have a limited knowledge on this again, but I'm also kind of just getting started and I've had a few little successes so far. So hopefully you can look at these, learn a little bit from them, and hopefully do this yourself as well if you're interested in it. So I'm going to be talking primarily in this video about icon sets, since these are the things that have sold for me pretty well so far. What an icon set is basically a series of simple graphic designs used together in a collective piece. So you see this pretty frequently on stock photography websites where you're going to see groups of little designs sold in multiples. So maybe people are selling 25 of them, 9 of them, 100 of them. Primarily myself, I sell between 9 and 25 of them. It creates a nice little aesthetic because you can build them in a little square and you can kind of display them better. But yeah, basically what icon sets are multiple vectors sold together as a cohesive piece that people can kind of use and draw from, so that it saves them some time with graphic design, or if they just want to add simple elements to their website or their applications or whatever they're using them for. It's just basically a time saver and a little bit of color or flavor adder to whatever purpose you're using them for. So this kind of brings us to our first tip, which is to sell multiple images at the same time or sell multiple vectors at the same time. So generally speaking, if you're creating really simple designs in the beginning, if you just try and sell them individually, it might have a low chance of selling because people can recreate those things quite easily themselves. So a lot of the times people will purchase vectors or icon sets because they're graphic designers themselves and they're looking for a way to basically save themselves some time. And so what you're providing them with is just a little bit of a shortcut so that they can include what you've included in your icons into the work that they're doing. So basically what you want to do with your vectors is sell them in multiples because people are going to be more interested in using multiple elements from what you've created and incorporating it in their work. It's going to be a little bit better because if you're just selling one thing at a time, it doesn't have a whole lot of value, but people are going to be more interested in your work if you're selling multiple ones at a time. It's basically just kind of a deal. They're getting more for their money. They're going to get more elements that they can actually use and incorporate in their graphic design process. And in general, they're just going to have more options with your work. So that's really something good to focus on. You can create multiple series of images at the same time. This is good for you too if you're developing as a graphic designer as well, because it's going to force you to do a little bit more work instead of just trying to plunk out really simple, basic vectors. It's going to force you to kind of create a cohesive piece of multiple icons that are going to be similar in style and that sort of a thing. This brings me to the second thing, which is to have a consistent aesthetic across your icon sets. So you don't want to have images that are dramatically different from one another. What you really want to make sure that you're doing is creating kind of a consistent aesthetic across each one of the icons that you're putting out there. So if you have a circle around one of the icons that you've created, you want to make sure that all of the circles have the same stroke, the same width, and the same size about them. So you want to make sure that they're consistent across each little icon that you're creating. You want to make sure that the actual artistic style is not varying wildly across all of the things you're creating as well. You want to make sure that if you're going with black silhouettes, dark, thick lines, you want to make sure that that's consistent across all the little icons that you're creating. If you're doing something that's thin or with a certain color scheme, you want to make sure that you're drawing that across all of your icons. And I've made this mistake a few times so far with the vectors that I've created, where it does not look consistent whatsoever. So it looks kind of weird when you see it as a whole piece when you're putting all of your icons on a page. So just make sure that you have consistent aesthetic for all of the icons that you're putting together. This will actually be a little bit easier on you as well, because you're going to be able to reuse a lot of the elements that you're creating. So it'll probably save you a little bit of time to kind of create a consistent aesthetic. And yeah, this is just going to help people to kind of see your image as an artistic whole. And if they're using it on a website or an application or something like that, they're going to be able to use multiple icons from your set potentially for the work that they're using, and they're just going to be more interested in buying something that looks a little bit more consistent across the board. The third thing that I got for you in terms of vectors and icon designs is to present your work in an aesthetically pleasing way. So even if you've created your icons and they look really good, they look really consistent, and you've got a lot of really good little elements, if they're not presented in an aesthetically pleasing way, it's going to be probably a negative for people who want to buy your work. So if you have 9 icons, you obviously want to lay them out in a uniform way, have them all sized correctly so that when you're looking at them, they look pleasing to the eye. And this is something that I struggled with at the very beginning. I was just kind of plunking my vectors into it, and then when I was uploading them, I was looking at the previews and they were just hideous because the location of everything was unbalanced. It was kind of just a travesty to the eye when you were looking at it. So just make sure that when you actually put all of your vectors on the final page and when you're displaying them, that they look consistent. And this is why I like to do sets of 9, 16, 25. I haven't got up to 36 or anything like that, but it's nice because you can just put them into a square, and it's a little bit easier for my brain to comprehend what I'm doing if I can just put them into a simple square and it looks very uniform at the end. So that's a good tip to follow. Just make sure that you actually display them in a aesthetically pleasing way so it looks pretty at the end of it, so that you're not actually putting all of this work in and then displaying it in an ugly way. So just, yeah, make sure that you're taking into account the spatial arrangement of your vectors in the end. The fourth tip that I got for you is kind of a time-saving tip, and that's to use the vectors that you've created in the past in your present designs. So a lot of the little elements and shapes that you create are probably usable in other projects that you're creating. So what you want to do is maybe draw on some of the stuff you've created in the past, certain shapes that you've saved into your library. So you want to keep reusing those things if you need to kind of draw on them. So for instance, if you created a complex shape that took a long time to trace out, you might want to reuse that a few times in other vector elements. I've done that with a few tracing things that I've done with CBD oil, because most of the icon sets that I've created have kind of revolved around that. I've noticed that they've been selling, so why not create more of them? But since there's some complex shapes involved in that, namely the marijuana leaf, it's a little bit better in all regards to reuse those shapes so you don't have to constantly recreate complex shapes. So if there's an element that you've created that took you a while to make, maybe think about reusing that over and over in some of your other designs, just so that you can kind of get back some of your time, and so that you can kind of take full advantage of the shapes and, you know, the things that you're creating. So yeah, reuse elements when you can, especially when you're creating new designs, because basically what vectors are is they're time savers for graphic designers. So why not use your own graphic designs to kind of save yourself some time when you're creating new vectors. The fifth and final tip that I got for you is to kind of find a niche market for the vector icon sets that you're creating. So I stumbled upon CBD oil as something that's really popular in the news right now. It's just kind of a thing that people are making lots of products around, websites around, so they're probably scrambling and looking for graphic resources to support what they're creating on their websites and their applications. So it's a really good thing to stumble upon, but you know, I'd suggest perusing the news, seeing what new products are out there, kind of big trends that you can look for, and just creating icon sets based on things that might be applicable to those new industries, those emerging industries that might not have icon sets out there already that are geared towards them. I've already sold just one icon set in particular that was about fitness and kind of the technology involved in fitness, and just the working out icons and exercise and lifestyle sort of vector icon set. So there are ones that you can use for, you know, industries that are big, and the exercise industry is one that's always going to be big. So maybe think about creating things for industries that are have a pretty wide scope and have a pretty big grasp, that are always looking for graphic resources. You can always lean into those things. But I think you're probably gonna have more success if you look for kind of emerging things, something that's new, that people would be looking for new resources for. So yeah, look in the news, see what's new, see what's happening, and maybe you can capitalize a little bit on that when you're creating your graphic resources and you're going out to sell them. So I hope this was useful to you. I hope this video helped you kind of see some of the vectors and the things that I'm working on, and hopefully you can use some of this information, apply it to the vector creations that you're doing, and hopefully you can build some nice, simple, cool little icon sets and slowly improve your skill set and slowly build up your library with this. My goal is to create about 100 of these by the end of maybe the summer here. It depends on how busy I am with photography and other things, but I really want to keep working on the vector sets, kind of developing my graphic design skill set. So hopefully what I can do is just create more of these and kind of relay to you the information that's working for me. If you enjoyed this video and if you want to see tutorials on Adobe Illustrator about the actual process that I use to build my vectors and to create the shapes and all of that thing, just let me know in the comments if you want to see a tutorial, and I'll go ahead and put that together. I put together a tutorial a little while ago, but I'd like to update that because I've actually gotten a bit better on Adobe Illustrator, so I can probably give some more coherent instruction with that. So yeah, if you want to see that, if you want to see tutorials on creating a full icon set, let me know, and I'll run through the whole process from start to finish in a very simplified way about how to create an icon set. So if you enjoyed this video, by all means you can subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support that everybody's been giving me so far on this front. It's been fun to create these videos. It's even more fun to actually do the stock image thing and do the artistic components, so I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, join the team, come aboard, subscribe, do that whole thing. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this was useful to you, and I'll catch you in the next video.